Hi there, this is Jeff Van Dyck, and you're listening to XVGM Radio.
SKITCHIN!
Welcome to XVGM Radio, where the bits keep coming. I'm Mike.
And I'm Niko.
And this is episode 135, interview with Jeff Van Dyck. I am so excited to have another fantastic composer on the show. We've had so many over the years, and this one has been one that, honestly, no joke, and I'm not just spitting this out. We've been talking about trying to get you on the show for like a long time, like years. I think I may have messaged you on Twitter like way back in the day. I can't remember. One of my favorite soundtracks of all time is SKITCHIN. It's just so much fun. And so when I knew we were going to do this and you agreed to it, and I was just like, awesome. Like, we gotta play SKITCHIN as an intro track. So it's just so iconic. And we're going to ask you questions because we got another SKITCHIN track later. But first, I just wanted to say thanks so much for being on the show and taking time out of your day to talk to us about, nerdy VGM stuff that we love.
No worries. Thank you for having me. And thanks for the intro there. Yeah, it's always a lot of fun to get all nostalgic and listen to the old tunes. Think about how things were back then, way back then. God, it's a long time ago now, isn't it?
It must be kind of like funny to talk to. I don't know if you've done too many video game music podcasts like where you're the guest, but it must be weird to like talk to us because like we were all kids when this stuff was coming out, and so we were playing it as we were growing up. So it's like, what's that like to like talk to these now gray 40-year-olds or 30-year-olds or whatever know?
Well, as a gray 50-year-old, it's very satisfying, to be honest, because you guys were the target audience, and I was putting my headspace into the same headspace as you guys back then. It's like, what would be cool, what would sound cool, and I always put myself in the mindset of the gamer when coming up with the music, and it was like, okay, let's just do something cool, something that makes you nod your head and get into it. So
Yeah.
It's really satisfying to talk to people who have grew up with it and see it's actually amazing what an impact it had. You know, it was the impact was unexpected, actually.
Yeah, I would imagine
what I mean?
you didn't probably think of that when you were like originally doing the music,
exactly.
Right? Yeah,
exactly. What's interesting, the impact is that you listen to this stuff and it takes you back to those days, and it's a positive feeling. It makes you feel good. People get like solace from it. You know what I mean? And that's the impact I wasn't expecting, that people would be listening to this stuff 30 years later and getting good vibes from it. You know? And it being such a positive thing. So yeah, I quite like that.
Can you tell us a little bit about your musical background, like growing up? Like, how did you get into music at all?
I have a musical family. So my mother was a jazz singer. My dad was a jazz piano player. I was very influenced by my old man. He was also an electronics engineer and a programmer. He, in the early 70s, he built his own analog synthesizers. Of course, actually, everything was analog back then. And yeah, so I grew up watching this sort of mad scientist building stuff. But also he was like a studio musician, and he would go and do recording sessions in studios in Vancouver, Canada, where I'm from. You know, he'd take me along with him, and I'd watch in the studio. First of all, just being in a studio was cool, all the equipment and speakers and tape machines and stuff like that. But then there's these musicians that would come in and look at charts for the first time and read through it and go, okay, 1, 2, 3, and play it perfectly. And then go, oh, let's change a little thing here, do one more take, done. They've recorded whatever was needed in the second take. Just really professional musicians. And I found the camaraderie between them intoxicating. Like just watching musicians communicate and mesh, and the laughs and the vibe of the studio and stuff. And I was like, I love this. This is what I want to do.
That's cool.
So that was the inspiration, was really seeing people who were really good at it doing it really well in a really interesting environment. And so I, took piano lessons. I was lucky that my dad gave me an old synth. In fact, I have the synth right there.
Oh, that's cool.
Old System 100 from long ago. So that's definitely helped me get into it. And then, getting into being a teenager, starting to join bands and gig around town, and went on tour across Canada, and was a pretty typical starving musician through most of my life. And then in 1992, a friend of mine said, hey, there's this ad in the newspaper, Electronic Arts is looking for an audio programmer. I had dabbled in programming, and I thought maybe I could get in there and fake it and get in and do what I really want to do, which is audio. And so I went in for the job interview and met all these really cool musicians that were working there at the time. And then they took me into a big boardroom and filled it full of programmers and grilled me on programming questions. And I completely failed. just burned, and they said, okay, thanks. And sent me, the next day I got a letter in the mail saying thanks, but no thanks. And I didn't get the gig. I was really bummed. And then 2 weeks later, they called me and they said, hey, we heard you're a lousy programmer, but we really like your demo tape. Would you like to come in and do some sound effects on a hockey game? And I was just like, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
And that was the beginning of the rest of my life, basically. So I was given a job at EA.
Okay. So was that was NHL hockey in 93?
I did the PC port of NHL hockey.
Okay.
Sound. Yeah. So that, you remember the original NHL hockey on the Genesis?
Yeah.
It was the PC port of that.
Oh, yeah, on DOS. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
DOS, that's right.
Your first credit, at least on Moby Games, is 4D boxing. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that was right around the same time. So I did that, and then... So, are you familiar with the FM Towns?
We did a whole episode on it, yeah.
Yeah, so that was like really, I think possibly the first sort of CD-ROM-based platform, I think.
The Towns Marty, I think, right?
Yeah, I don't know the specifics of it.
Yeah.
But we were told you don't have to do MIDI music on this one. We can do proper music. And the reason why I got the job at EA was I was producing pop music, and I actually had my own recording studio called MIDI City. And Mike Sakurka and I went into my studio and took his MIDI tracks that he had done for a different platform and converted his MIDI tracks into full production with guitars and vocals and
nice,
stuff.
like Redbook
And
Audio.
Exactly. It was like basically one of the first sort of Redbook Audio kind of platforms, Redbook games that I worked on, actually. But straight after that went all the way back to Genesis, FM Synth, and PSG and Square Waves.
Right. So funny that we bring up 4D boxing because it's our next track. Don't worry, everybody. We're going to get back to SKITCHIN in just a minute, but my first pick for this episode is actually from 4D boxing. This came out on the FM Towns in 1992. The song that we're going to be playing is called Track 2, and you could probably dispute the actual names of the track, but it's listed as Track 2, and it also is composed, according to this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but Michael J. Sakurka?
Sakurka.
Cool.
Yep.
All right, let's give it a listen.
Box. 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 Get ready to play.
All right, that was a fun little jam. That was 4D Boxing, the FM Towns version. Came out in 1992. That was track 2 with Michael J. Sakurka also helping out there. Niko, what are your thoughts on this 4D boxing jam?
Oh, I love it. It's so, I don't want to say silly, but I just love like the vocal parts there with the fight. And of course you got the bell ringing, and it's just a nice fun track too. You got that great guitar in the middle, which I love a lot of the obviously guitar work that Jeff does throughout a lot of his early work, and of course throughout the whole career. But it's a great track. I love it. It's not much, I haven't listened to much of the whole 4D series actually, but I like this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I'm also a sucker for PCM samples, like voice samples and stuff like that. So when composers fit in like little voice samples, I just get giddy. It's so much fun to listen to, the fight and all that stuff. And even like little grunts, like huh, huh, like that sort of stuff. I love it when composers do that. It's so much fun to listen to. I got a lot of like early 90s dance music, like CNC Music Factory from this with that guitar, and also that the beginning with the drums and everything. It just kind of, the vibe for me was like definitely like CNC Music Factory, kind of like Good Vibrations, like that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Was that what you were going for?
Absolutely. That was the influence. That was what was all the rage back then. You know, Michael wrote this song for 4D boxing in a different sort of on another platform. I'm trying to remember what it was. Possibly it was like on a PC early DOS version, and it would have been like on an ad-lib card or a Sound Blaster. It would have been pre-Redbook Audio is what he would have composed it for originally. And then this was a port to the FM Towns, which I think at the time, or maybe all the time, was only available in Japan, I think. And this was one of the first CD-ROM platforms ever that was available. It was really ahead of its time. And so they said we could, instead of using the MIDI music, we could make Redbook Audio basically full, proper recordings like normal music with proper guitars and vocals and all that sort of stuff. And so we went to town, and at the time I was partners in a recording studio called MIDI City in Vancouver. Mike came down with his tunes, and we just basically converted it from the smaller MIDI tracks that he had to more fully produced tracks. And yeah, as you say, CNC Music Factory at the time was all the rage, and so we're clearly influenced by that.
Yeah. It's pretty obvious just listening to it and knowing the music back then, because I was into it too. So I think pretty much everybody was into that. I think so. The type of music.
But the thing about having the samples in there, it was such a novelty back then. You know, now you can put anything in a game,
right?
And have an entire orchestra in a game. You know, it's so you can have anything. But back then, it was quite cool to hear a voice pop up and stuff like that. So,
do you ever think to compose newer music in the style of, because like modern retro is so hip right now, you know, everybody's doing, you know, these throwback 8-bit 16-bit type soundtracks. Do you ever like get the feeling like, oh, you know what, this next game I'm going to do a retro soundtrack, I'm going to throw something like this in there?
So recently I did a game called Unpacking, and that was a pixel art game, and so it begged for a chiptune style, and so it did make me feel like I was going back in time working on it. The difference was that while I did do that, I did combine acoustic guitars with it and some electric guitars with it, and then so we had that sort of hybrid of old school and new school to blend it together, and it turned out quite nice, actually.
Oh, that's cool.
But yes, I have gone down that path and really enjoyed it. It was really cool. Yeah.
So 4D sports boxing on these older systems was pretty archaic. It was impressive for its time visually, if you really look at it in terms of the 3D aspects of it. You had actual like 3D models fighting in a 2D ring, and so it, you know, visually it was pretty rough around the edges, even for back in the day. But it's cool to see in action, and you know, of course, with a great soundtrack kind of lighting it up. To me, and Niko probably feels the same, you could play a game that's not great, but if the soundtrack is killer, like you may want to actually, you know, sit down and play it a little longer than you would if like you were playing something and you were just kind of like, meh, you know. So
movies could be like that too.
Yeah.
My wife and I were watching a movie. I can't even remember what it was. It was that uninteresting, and the audio was just really uninteresting. And it, you know, whereas, you know, you watch something and the music is just fantastic. I think I took a flight the other day and I was watching maybe Batman Begins or something like that. And, you know, I'm watching just a guy climbing a mountain, you know, very uninteresting scene, but the music was just so full and epic and amazing. I think it's Hans Zimmer, and it's like, wow, this is amazing. Something so simple looks amazing because of the soundtrack being so good, you know.
Working with the PC 98 as compared to other computers and systems at the time, how much of a different beast is it to work with that computer system?
PC 98. I'm trying to remember what that was. That was around the time of the FM Towns as well. Am I right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that was another Japanese computer system. Yeah, we're going to be playing a track a little bit later from the PC 98, but since FM Towns and PC 98 are so similar, in terms of the fact that they're both Japanese computer systems, the PC 98.
I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Like the biggest deal was that the FM Towns had the CD-ROM, and we could do that. Was the PC 98, did it have a CD-ROM as well?
The PC 98 did not. PC 98 was, I believe it was a Yamaha sound chip in terms of the audio. Yeah, the PC 88 and the PC 98 worked off of similar audio in terms of the Genesis, like the Sega Genesis or the Mega Drive, whatever you want to call it. So in terms of, they weren't exact, but the processor for the sound was different.
I see. Yeah, I'm pretty sure, because I'm looking at the song that you'll play from that, which we did around the same time that we did 4D boxing. Like we ported 4D boxing, then we did 4D driving. But in both those cases, we in my involvement, I didn't do anything to do with like the MIDI side or the sound programming side. I was specifically producing the music in my studio with Mike on those games. So in terms of a difference between these two systems, there wasn't much of a difference. But the difference between these systems and everything else at the time was that everything else was, as you say, like the Sega Genesis, and the Sound Blaster and the Ad-Lib card were all FM synth that you had to get really technical with the synth programming and getting the MIDI data in there and getting it all working was very tedious, which I did a lot of on other games. And that was the main difference between these Japanese systems were like ahead of their time. With that CD-ROM. And also these games themselves were ahead of their time because, as you said, this is one of the first times we've seen 3D characters, albeit extremely low poly, as you'll notice. And I'm trying to remember, I think this was pre-motion capture, right? So I think they were doing some rotoscoping, tracing around video to get the motion, but then to translate that to 3D. So this is like one of the first 3D fighting games ever, before it became cool with the more modern fighting games that are much more responsive. The problem with this game was, I remember playing it, like the boxing game, was there's quite a bit of lag between pushing the punch button and then it would wind up and punch, and it felt you had to sort of play ahead of the action in a way. You know what I mean? To make up for the lag.
The Yamaha YM2608 or the OPNA sound chip, that's the sound chip in the PC98. There were different models. The earlier models had, I think, the YM2203 OPN, but this one was OPNA. Later models offered the OPN3, the YMF288. But yeah, the long story short is, it was a Yamaha sound chip, very similar to the Sega Genesis. It was FM synth. Also had 3 PSG channels as well. So, all right. Niko, you're up next. What do you got?
I'm so excited for my tracks. I'm excited in general. I love taking all this in. I absolutely love just hearing you tell these stories, Jeff. It's one thing I very much love about this. And of course, like you were saying, the music from game. If a game isn't good, but the music's great, that's of course a great takeaway. Something that sticks with me, of course, it has for a long time. But I have a fantastic track from the Need for Speed on the PS1, Saturn, and Windows PC release in 1996. This is the track Ay-Ya-Ya with also Angela Van Dyke on vocals. Hey, welcome back. You just heard the amazing track from Need for Speed on the PS1, Saturn, and PC release in 1996. That was Ya, also featuring Angela Van Dyke on vocals.
Who came up with that name? Was that you?
Yeah, you could probably blame me for that. Because, I remember I had asked Ange to sing on it. Mm-hmm. And she's and I had this melody in my head, and I think I just wanted to go da 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 da, you know, yeah, you know, that kind of thing. And she just mimicked what I said, and she said, "What word should it be?" And I said, "Well, what's wrong with yeah? I mean, it's like it sounds nice,
right?
You know, there's a song, famous disco song. It's like yeah. You know, whatever that song is.
Yeah,
so if they could do it, is that Earth, Wind, and Fire or
yeah, September.
Oh,
Dancing in September.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh wow.
They do pretty much go oh my god. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that I wasn't thinking that at the time, but I discovered when I discovered that Earth, Wind, and Fire song, I went, yeah, okay, well, if they could do it, I could do it. So.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, I was going to say, this sounds a lot like something from some of the later, DDR and also some of the, Contra stuff that came out in, of the PS2 era, like Neo Contra, Contra Shattered Soldier.
Yeah.
You know, you've got that, techno swirling kind of energy that's going on here. And then with those additional sound samples kicking in with the vocals and everything, it just it gives off this DDR quality. I was really vibing, and it was channeling vibes of that sort of thing. Were you just kind of going for a kind of techno vibe?
Oh, definitely. I mean, the we were told keep the tempo up because you're driving, and I think some of the songs were rock and some of the songs were electronic. I think it was something like that. Yeah, so I was told to do that sort of electronic-y thing. I'm trying to remember the genre that was all the rage. I want to say jungle or something like that, which is if jungle's the right term. But it was basically really fast drum loops played over a drum machine kind of thing. Gives us that vibe. And then the idea was to have some vocals in there because a lot of game music didn't have vocals at the time, and so it was really kind of ooh, should we, maybe are we allowed to? Should we? And I was just well, I'm gonna just go for it.
Yeah.
There's a moment about a third of the way through the song where the song breaks down and some sort of strange sounds are heard, but you can hear a distorted voice. It's actually Ange reading the manual to a printer. She read it. She was kind of laughing while doing it, and then I took it and I flipped it in reverse, and so it's being played in reverse. So it has this weird. It's distorted. So it's distorted and backwards, and it just adds this really interesting sort of energy in the middle there. So, and the reason why it was a printer manual is because that's
Oh,
happened to be in the studio at the time. So.
That's so funny. I was wondering what that was. That's
funny.
Yeah, I love that. And you nailed it with this track. This is why it's also my favorite from the soundtrack, along with the Odyssey. Just to shout out that track as well.
Yes.
I mean, everyone that was, of course, participated in that OST did a great job. But I, of course, love your tracks the most, and I'm a sucker for any kind of vocals, as was done in this. It just brings a good vibe, and yes, I love the style that went with this. Almost like trance too. Of course, all the techno and electronic relation. It's
for sure,
and it's exactly the type of song I would love to hear when driving fast, as I would in this game. Which I played it briefly, of course, because got experience Need for Speed. That's one of the OG classic 3D racing games that really, it walked so others could run, but really it's still a great series. There's been so many great entries and the music throughout.
Tons and tons of Need for Speed games.
It's interesting you mentioned Odyssey. I do like that song as well. And the reason why it's called Odyssey is one of the guys that worked on the music. I think he was mixing all the tunes. His name was Edwin Delinsky. And he brought in his synth called an Odyssey, or Odyssey, I think it was called. And yeah, so he brought that synth in, and that synth is prominent in that song, and so we just called the song Odyssey.
Yeah.
Very simple. You're just, it's like you see that kind of thing that you see in like movies or TV shows where somebody's got to come up with a name on the fly, and they're just like looking around the room, and they're just like that thing and that thing. That's pretty much what you did.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Exactly.
When it comes to racing games, of course, you've got that noise, the engine noises and the revving and the tires and squealing and everything. It's a very sound effects heavy type of game genre. How do you make it so that the music still stands out in those types of games as compared to like maybe an action platformer or shooter or whatever?
With great difficulty. It's hard. The reason is that the engine and the road noise and the wind and all that stuff is just constant. So it's eating up all that space in audio, you know what I mean? And so it's a trade-off. It's also one of the reasons why we give players the option to change the volume controls, because some people want to hear all that road noise because they want to hear when they're losing traction and care less about the music, or some people don't care and bump the music up. One thing that does help when you're mixing the music in that scenario is to compress the music dynamically, make it take up less dynamic range, and that way you can kind of have it a little quieter, yet you will still hear most of the detail in the song. So those are, it's a simple trick, but it's effective in that regard. The other thing is you can, certain sound effects are important, like potentially a police siren chasing you or something, or something, some warning or whatever. And, you can have those duck the music, and the music just briefly goes quieter for that sound to be more apparent. Stuff like that. It's pretty, but it is a pain in racing games, that battle between the engine and the music.
Oh, I can imagine. When it comes to this type of music as compared to like your more rock-based tracks, do you have a preference on what you prefer to work on when you do a soundtrack? Like, do you prefer the more like rock-based stuff, or do you like the more electronic, or maybe like a mix of it?
One of the big perks of my job and how I've landed in my career is that every game is different, and I thrive on that difference. I worked on Alien Isolation, crazy horror game, and I worked on Unpacking, which is a cozy, feel-good chiptunes game. You know what I mean? So I love the difference, and so I just want the next game to be like, if the next game says do nothing but chiptunes, sure, because the thing I just did was a bunch of sort of rock hybrid orchestral stuff, and so I've had my fill of that, and so I don't necessarily have a preference, to be honest, in that regard, because I just like working on all sorts of different music in different ways, and just try and do as good a job as I can.
Sure.
On it.
I gotta ask, so Angela, I'm assuming, is your wife?
Yes.
Okay. Did you meet her at EA, or how did you guys? Oh, you did. Okay.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, she showed up, and out of all the guys that were there, somehow I got in there, and and that was in 1994, I think.
Yeah, because this was 96 for this game, right? Yeah. So.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So you felt comfortable enough, like 2 years later after meeting her in 94, to be like, hey, will you record some vocals?
Oh, yeah. Well, because I discovered that she was a really good singer.
Okay.
And she's a really good lyricist as well.
Oh, cool.
And there's another Need for Speed song that has singing in it called Headless Horse. And she wrote some really cool words for that, for Need for Speed 2.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And we've worked together on lots of different songs and different games over the years, and still do. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is
Very
amazing.
cool.
That is one of the other tracks from the second game, which I was close to picking as well. I mean, between the two, I was like, I got to choose either some from the first game or the second. And that was one of them too. And clearly she has great talent, of course. Big praise to her. Thank you.
Yeah.
To Angela for her contributions. I love so much about the video game music sphere and hearing this stuff. It's great. I'm just so giddy And folks, don't worry, I'll be talking more. I was probably quiet in the beginning, just putting that out there. Cause
you're gonna make Niko cry if we keep it up.
Of the few composers I have been able to talk to, which is mostly like one other, I was close, because when you get to meet a hero, especially from your childhood, it's
for sure.
It brings up a lot of emotions, you know.
I'm just the grizzled podcaster's just like, yeah, this is another one in the chamber, and Nico's like star eyes. So
that's funny.
Okay, so next up, I got a track which I'm really excited to talk about because I've loved this game and didn't even know that it was your soundtrack until maybe 2 years ago or so. I was like, oh man, if I bring Jeff on, I gotta play a track from this. It's a little game called Assault Android Cactus. It originally came out in 2013 on Windows, and then it also came out on the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and the Switch in 2016. This track is called Fingerstyle. It's by our composer that we're chatting with, Jeff Van Dyck. That was Assault Android Cactus. It's an awesome twin-stick shooter that came out in 2013 on Windows, and then Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and Switch in 2016. It did get like a re-release afterwards, like a Plus edition, Assault Android Cactus Plus. It was an enhanced edition that came out on the Switch in 2019 as well. This track was called Fingerstyle, and I absolutely love this game and this song. This is the player select music. So when you're choosing different characters, and the whole game is a twin stick shooter that has these really cutesy, fun robot kid type characters who have all different fun names. Cactus, Holly, Lemon, Coral, Starch, Aubergine, Shiitake, Peanut, and Licorice. And you could unlock some of those later ones after you defeat certain bosses in the game. What are your thoughts on this one, Niko?
Oh, this is so fun, and great menu music. I love a good menu tune. Yeah, this is so good. I love that the BPM on this, just that constant this is perfect. Like, yeah, this pumping just like at a it's like rave style almost.
Yeah,
and it does that little like breakdown, like I love that too. This is a great fun track. I am get my foot a tapping and everything. It just makes me want to go party, basically.
Yeah, it's a head bobber for sure. It reminds me of like if you're at a club, which I don't go to clubs very often, but like if I walk by a club, let's just say, you'll hear the music on the outside, and you always get like that, like almost muted sound because it's traveling. The music is traveling through the walls, so you hear that, you know, kind of fuzzy buzz sound to the music. And that's kind of what I picture here, is that while you're picking characters, the music is coming from the level that you're about to play through. And so like maybe the characters are like just outside of that level, kind of hanging out. So tell me about like how this came about, because this isn't like a game done through like a big, you know, time company like EA or anything like this. This was developed by Witchbeam Studios. So how did you get started on this one?
The way that all worked out was I was working at a company called Creative Assembly Australia. Creative Assembly is the head offices in the UK, in Horsham, I think. And they had opened up a studio in Australia, in Brisbane. And I worked there and worked on all sorts of Total War stuff all the way up to 2012. And then I left, and one of the guys I worked with at Creative Assembly Australia, Sanatan Mishra, he and I bumped into each other downtown just randomly, and it's like, hey, how you doing? You know, he goes, and he said, we left Creative Assembly, and Tim, our other friend, and I are roommates now, and we've started our own game company, and we're making our own game. And I went, and he said, you should come by and check it out. And so about a week later, I dropped by, see Sanatan's nickname is Nart for whatever reason. So Nart and Tim, I'm at their place. And they put on this game, and it's an early version of Cactus. And I'm playing it, and I'm going, oh, I love this game. I love these kind of games. And they're like, cool. So who could you recommend to do audio on it and music? Do you know any people? And I said, well, what about me? and they said, oh, but aren't you? You're like AAA guy. We're just a couple of indies. You know, you wouldn't have time for us. And I'm like, absolutely. You know, I'd love to work on something like this because, I mean, working on Total War games, I was just doing a lot of world/orchestral kind of soundtracky music, and this was an opportunity to do some full-on electronic music, which I was kind of itching to do, pull the synths out, you know. So they said, well, wouldn't you be expensive? And I said, how are you guys making money from this? They're like, we're living off our savings. And we've started the company, and, you know, we're going to own this going forward, you know. And I said, well, how about I become a partner with you guys, and we all take the risk together, you know, because I was quite impressed that they were kind of risking all they had on this. And they said, sure. So I actually became a partner in Witchbeam. Oh, cool. And then continued to work with them. And that's how I got involved, and that's how I ended up working on it. Yeah. Huh. And so I'm still a partner in that company today. That game did okay. It's not a huge hit of a game, but it did okay. And it actually did well enough to partially fund Unpacking.
Oh, okay.
Which then did quite well. So it was a good investment, so to speak.
That's awesome.
I would very much say so. I just took a quick look at it because I haven't played the game either, but it looks great, and how the music is, I'm sure I will enjoy the heck out of it, both the gameplay and the music, of course. Yeah. And I really love that, what you did for them, because I feel like that's just one of the things, you know, just like with the art of gaming, and, you know, they're, you know, living off their savings, just making something I'm sure they were passionate about, and I really love that.
Yeah, and as do I. And in fact, you know, like I'm probably 10 years older than my business partners on Witchbeam, but they had clued into owning what they do. You know what I mean? Rather than working for the man, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're absolutely right. And here I am, you know, working for the man, and with no real, not looking beyond the you know, that tunnel vision I had. And it was a revelation. And it actually completely changed the way I approach how I work in the industry. because of that. And so I've done that multiple times now, and it's worked out really well. I feel better for it because, what more could you ask than to own what you do,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, if you think about it, like you kind of get the best of both worlds because you've obviously done AAA stuff, and now you're also doing indie stuff as well, which is it's great to see a composer kind of stretch to be able to go back and forth, and really it's just more about the passion of the project itself and not necessarily making something just to kind of pay the bills, so to speak. Obviously that kind of helps, but
Yes.
it's cool that there's still some artistry left in the world of video game development.
Oh, there is.
Which is great.
Absolutely, there is. There, and it goes even further. Like there are people that do games as art. It's like there's no intention of this making money. This is not about it making money. This is about we're gonna make a thing that it conjures an emotional response. That's what it's, and that's the sole purpose. And that's really commendable. I fall somewhere in between. I think I like doing something that's just purely creative, but also with a little bit of common sense in there so it could be sold and make a buck to pay the bills.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that's life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
This game has 4 different modes. It's got a story mode, campaign. It's got a 50-layer challenge mode and infinity drive. It's got challenges that are like daily challenges. I think those are called the daily drives, and it also has a boss rush mode. 9 different characters to pick from, 25 different stages. It's pretty massive for being like a little tiny indie twin stick shooter.
Yep.
But I gotta say, the characters are adorable. They're so fun.
Yeah.
When you select a character, they'll have this like kind of reaction, like almost as if they're surprised that you're picking them. Like one character would be like, like shocked.
Yeah.
And then another character will be like, phew, like like if you click them, then they'll go and then if you deselect from them, they'll go phew, like I don't have to go. My favorite character by far is Starch. So Starch is
she's kind of crazy. A little crazy.
She's like a broken robot, and she has eyes that one eye will close while the other eye's opening, almost like a drunk robot. And when you select her, she screams pineapple. It's so it's so funny. She's the best. So I love playing as Starch. My oldest daughter loves this game. Like we play it like not often, but like anytime I boot up my PS5, if I'm selecting going through all my downloaded games and stuff, I'll be like, oh, what about this one? And do you remember that one? She's like, yeah. She's like, let's play it, because she loves seeing the characters pop up and have those little catchphrases. So for a while there, like when she was younger, she would just walk around going pineapple. So
that's
fun.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
So I mean, just other tidbits on that game is my voice is in there in the intro movie. My wife's voice is in there as one of the bosses.
Okay.
Vespula is her voice.
Oh.
And my daughter, Ella, is the final boss.
Oh, cool.
In there. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
And yes, I have played the game many times with my daughter as well. And she loves it.
It's a very kid-friendly game. If you got kids, if you're listening and you got kids, definitely check out this game because you'll love it. There's also, I thought this was pretty cool. I was looking around on the web for information about this game. There's a whole website dedicated to the player ranking statistics, and they break down what weapons were used by which characters, for the most part, the top 10 score ranking representation on the bosses, did Cactus, do better than Starch, or did Lemon do better than Coral? There's a whole pie chart and everything. It's really neat to see the level of dedication that fans have to this game. So it's pretty cool.
It is.
All right, Niko, what's going on next? What do you got for us?
All right, got my next track coming up, a fantastic one to represent Jeff's work on the Super Nintendo. We got NBA Live 96, released in 1995, and this is the End of Quarter theme. Welcome back to XVGM Radio, the interview with the one and only great Jeff Van Dyke, bringing you back from the NBA Live 96 track End of Quarter, released on the Super Nintendo in 1995. And I love the soundtrack. I love this track so much because it is exactly what I loved so much in early hardware of this era, is pushing the sound limitations of a console. And yeah, what do you think, Mike?
I love this. It's crunchy, and it has a lot of hip-hop influence, too, with the record scratches, which I love. So it's got that, like, grungy, crunchy kind of sound to it, which I'm a fan of. This is all sample-based, right? Like, a lot of the guitar work here sounds like sample-based.
It is. It is. I sampled... I was in a band called The Heavy Lounge, and the guitar player is my good friend, Saki Kaskas. And I brought him in and recorded him. There is a version of that full quality I have in my archives, which sounds amazing because it's like the full stereo.
Oh yeah.
It's I'll see if I can dig that up at some point.
That's cool.
And then I sampled that, sampled those riffs in and scrunched them into the Super Nintendo, because the Super Nintendo was just a sampler. It didn't actually have a synth. You could sample synths and put them in there, but it didn't actually have a synthesizer in it. So you had to just do everything with samples, like a tracker.
Yeah, there was a lot of compression going on in this too, right? Yeah. How difficult is it to compress something, and do you find that it's a struggle when you're trying to get your like artistic vision out in these tracks, and you're like, I want this to sound so much better than it sounds, but due to the compression, this is the best I can do?
It's an exercise in compromise. It's just endless compromising. But then you can find little victories though, which is the fun part of the whole thing. Is like with the bass sound. I remember putting it in. It was sampled at 11 kilohertz or something like that, and I'm putting it in, and it's like, I need more space. Okay, I'll reduce the bass to 6 kilohertz, and put that in. It's like, still sounds fine, and it's like, well, I still need more space. How low can I go with the sample rate? I think I ended up using a sample rate of like 1 kilohertz or something like that. It was incredibly low sample rate. Of course, there was no high frequencies in it, but the compression algorithm on the Super Nintendo had like built-in filtering, so it would filter out the graininess. Anyways, that bass sound is absolutely tiny as a sample. And I saved room doing that kind of thing, and I did it across all the samples as much as I could, so that I had as much space as possible for the guitar riffs, because they needed to be long, which is, I think I was given, it would have been either 32K or 64K of ROM space to store the samples in, and so you just gotta squish, and anywhere that you can loop something to save space was a big win. It was a must, really. So that's what it's like trying to get that stuff in there.
I mean, yeah, I can definitely hear it. I love like when you could tell when like you're using the chunk of the samples, and obviously you have to use repeated of like the same sample to save the space, because you're working with kilobytes of information pretty much.
Exactly. So like that whole soundtrack, like I think I have maybe 4 guitar riffs sampled, and then there might be 10 songs that use those same 4 riffs at different parts of the keyboard or different segments of the same riff. That was the fun part of working on those games at that time. Those dealing with those limitations forces you to come up with creative solutions, right? It's actually, now we can do anything, and there's no limitation. Sure. So sometimes it's hard to get inspired. It's like actually, giving yourself some parameters to constrain you actually helps with creativity, strangely enough, you know.
Do you ever miss composing in like the 16-bit era? I mean, considering the fact that we're a lot of this is we're focusing on like your earlier career. Do you tend to kind of miss that era, or are you more like, hey, I could do anything now, and so I'm not limited by what my limitations were back then? But like, I tend to, most of the composers that I talk to, a lot of them tend to find that the limitations were endearing, at least looking back on them now. But like back then, you were probably like, ugh, like I wish I could do so much more.
Oh yeah, no, they were a pain in the ass back in the day. It was a pain in the ass, and we were like, oh, I just wish we could just have streaming audio, you know. But of course, like I said, we did the best we could at the time. Yeah, I don't have any desire to say on a game, go, okay, I'm going to do this entire soundtrack in a tracker,
right?
A 4-channel tracker. I could,
sure,
I could. I know how to do it, but am I going to? I don't think I'm going to do that. I don't need the headache.
I don't know if you can answer this question because it's more like a development question for this game in particular. But Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley weren't in the game due to like licensing issues. But apparently they were in the game in the console versions. They were hidden in the game, unlocked by putting in their surnames in the Create a Player.
Oh yeah.
So I'm wondering like how, like that seems like a good way to get around like licensing stuff. Like basically Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley were like, no, you can't use our likeness. And so your development team was like, nah, screw that. Like these guys are going in the game. Like, did you get into hot water at all with, or did you hear any stories about getting into hot water about that?
I had nothing to do with that aspect of things.
I figured, yeah.
Yeah.
I figured I'd ask because I was like, wow, like I was just reading up on this and I'm like, that's kind of funny that they would just be like, let's just stick the two of the most popular NBA players without their permission in the Create a Player section. That's funny.
I mean, the worst thing I think I did is use a sort of well-known sound in a victory song for an NHL game. One of the NHL games. You know, I don't know if anybody noticed or anybody cares. I don't know, but yeah, that's the worst that I've done.
Okay. Now, there were different composers, from what I understand, on the different versions of this. I guess the PlayStation version was done by Traz Damji, who Niko and I, when we did our basketball episode a couple months ago, which was actually what spawned all this.
That's right. Yeah. You played, I think,
Coach K basketball.
Yeah, my pick.
Coach K.
Yep.
I was talking to Traz about a week ago. Yeah, we're old friends.
That's cool.
Good buddies.
So we were affectionately calling him Traz Damn G because the tracks were so good. We were just like, Damn G, this is good. So I guess he did the PS1 version. Steve Royer did the Genesis version.
Steve worked with Traz on a bunch of that stuff. I saw Steve recently too, actually.
Oh wow, that's cool. Do you guys like back then? Did you were you like, okay, I'm doing the Super Nintendo version, you do the Genesis version? Like, was there any like, I'm gonna do this track? Do you want to use this track in your version? Like, was there any of that?
Wasn't so much like that. It was scheduling. I feel like resourcing. It would have been like Traz would have been busy on something else. That's the only reason why I would have been asked to do an NBA game, because he was the NBA audio guy.
Right.
And I think he got busy on something maybe where there was an opportunity to do more of the redbook audio version, the streaming version.
That makes sense.
And I think he would have probably preferred to do that. I can't speak for him, but
sure.
I just remember being asked to do NBA. And so the producer on that, I think, was Tarney Williams. And he and I were good buddies. And I just remember in terms of like trying to decide what style of music should be, we were going to lunch or something, and he goes, yeah, I think we should do some music like this. And he put on Rage Against the Machine.
Okay.
Killing in the Name Of, I think specifically was the song. And it was the first time I heard that song. And Tarney had a wicked car stereo and some, hopped up Beamer, and we're windows down. That song is raging, and I'm just getting super inspired. It was like one of the coolest songs in a really awesome environment. Got so inspired, and that was ultimately why an NBA Live 96 sounds the way it does. It was basically that little car ride with Tarney.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I've always wondered if it was like kind of Rage Against the Machine inspired, but also knowing it was from your band, it even better, because I thought that was pure sampled from another group. But I love what was done here. And of course, to everyone listening, please listen to the entire soundtrack of the Super Nintendo version of NBA Live 96, because Jeff does amazing stuff on all the tracks, just like he was describing. And my main motto or thing I always love to bring up is limitations breathe creativity, and that's pretty much what I feel the like 8 and 16-bit era really was about, and what I love so much about this.
Yeah, if you want to hear more of Jeff's stuff for basketball, at least, go check out episode 132. We played a track from Coach K College Basketball on the Genesis. And that was a Jeff track as well. So yeah, check that episode out. That was so much fun to do, that episode. All right.
Yes.
So we're going to listen to Missile Command on the PlayStation 1. This game came out in 1999, and this was track 5 that we're going to be hearing. All right, we're back. That was track 5 from Missile Command, the PlayStation 1 game that came out in 1999. This track was super crunchy. Loved it. I really also like the very kind of staticky effects that are kind of thrown in later on in the track. This is kind of screaming like industrial metal, maybe like some lighter Fear Factory or like Static X. This really reminds me of Static X quite a bit. It's got that dancey industrial vibe of the guitars, very chuggy, but when you throw in those like more techno-y kind of ambient vibes, those are that kind of makes the track feel like a really proper merging of metal and dance. So yeah. What about you, Niko? What are your thoughts on this one?
Oh, absolutely. I haven't heard Static X in a while, but that was something then like Fear Factory 2 that like I made a connection with immediately, because I love the sound on this one, that crunchy guitar, and there's even a little bit I feel like there was a Rage Against the Machine influence on this track, kind of near like the 50-second mark. There's like that wah, 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 which I know like the effect that Tom Morello does on his guitar. It reminded me just like that. I was trying to think of the track it was. I know it's off the debut. I don't know if it's Bomb Track or one of the other tracks, but very much reminded me of that. And
I could see that.
Just a great sound, great energy too, and I love it.
So originally I had picked track 2 from this, but it turns out that it was composed by somebody else. And I was looking over the credits. So your name's listed under the music, and then there's additional music by Psychonaut Productions. I'm assuming that was the other composer. That was their production company.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. From my, is that what he called himself?
Psychonaut Productions.
I don't know. Ultimately, it was my friend Saki Kaskas.
Okay.
Wrote the other songs on this. We split the song list because I didn't have enough time to do it all myself, and he jumped on board. Yeah. So
that's cool. The whole soundtrack is very industrial, very kind of crunchy with a lot of these other elements. So yeah, I was really digging this soundtrack. You know, this is one of those games that I saw back in the day on the shelf. And I remember playing Missile Command when I was a kid, like, you know, on the arcade or whatever. Like, I would just find it, or it'd be like in a collection of some old school Atari titles. And like growing up, I was an NES guy, so I played a lot of NES stuff as a kid. And so Atari was a little too early for me. You know, I remember playing this, I think, in like the arcade in like a doctor's office or something like that, or a dentist's office or something, and just being like, this is kind of fun, but not really my thing. I'm more of like a Mega Man or, you know, Metroid or Castlevania kind of guy. But man, you know, seeing the cover and everything brings me back to just like going through games at the store and being like, Missile Command, they made a new one of those, and being like, whatever. But had I known that the soundtrack was this good, I probably would have picked it. I probably would have picked it up, honestly. But yeah, so that's what it seems like it is. It's just basically a Missile Command remake with some bonus cutscenes. So this was something that you worked on with Atari, is that right? Or was it a different company?
There was another company involved, but my memory of them it escapes me.
Developer is listed as Meyer Glass Interactive.
That's right, MGI. Yeah. Yep. That's right. And they're the ones that reached out to me.
Oh, okay.
Because the person that worked there used to work at EA and remembered me, and they needed somebody. And they put me put my name forward, and they said, "Yeah, just do the stuff that you were doing on the sports games. We'd be happy with that." So,
cool.
That's why it's kind of heavy and industrial. That's what they asked for.
Yeah, very of the time for sure in the late '90s, which a great influence. I love a lot of that sound, especially when I feel like there were other games like, or what happened with Missile Command was like they took an old Atari game and then they just updated it or brought it to modern console at the time, the PS1, which was still very hot, and then gave it, you know, cutscene upgrades and obviously its soundtrack, which was awesome. I swear there was another one. Wasn't there modern like Asteroids? Or I swear there was another
Space
one. Space
Invaders got one on the GameCube, but that was like 2006, or that was like a late release if I recall on the GameCube. But that was like a total remake of Space Invaders, where it's like you're a person moving, you know, on the bottom of the screen, and instead of being like a little spaceship. So it was totally different, but very similar vibes.
The same company got me to do their version of Battleship as well.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So when it comes to working with, because you mentioned EA, and a lot of your games were working with EA, how much freedom did you have for the soundtracks that you composed for EA specifically?
I feel like I had a lot of freedom. Initially, I remember being in a situation where the producer said, "Jeff, we want you to do music that sounded like TSN." I don't know if you remember TSN, the sports network. It was maybe it's a Canadian thing.
Might be a Canadian thing, yeah, that doesn't sound familiar.
But it was basically the sports channel on TV. TSN?
Yeah, we have ESPN here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this would have been maybe the predecessor to that.
Oh, okay.
But anyways, either way, the same kind of thing is that it was, at the time, it was like rock music with horns and stuff, and I wasn't into it, I'll be honest. It was not what I didn't want to do that. And I was crying on the shoulder of one of the programmers about it, you know, and he said, "Well, look, you're the musician, you know, why is it up to the producer? Why don't you just do what you feel is right, what you think people want?" And I think this, at the time, this was for FIFA soccer. I think that's what this was for. I went, okay, I'll just do what I feel is right, and and that's what I ended up doing, and it turns out people really liked that. So I just went, okay, maybe I'll just keep doing what I think.
Right.
Moving on.
Yeah.
And there was really never any point where somebody said, "Jeff, that's totally wrong." That's, you know, so people seemed to like what I was doing. There was, you know, a little bit of direction on, say, Need for Speed. Alistair Hurst was the director on that. And he said, "Yeah, do electronic, you know, in this sort of tempo range," and blah, blah, blah. That's about as descriptive as it got to me, which is still very open-ended, you know.
Right.
So, yeah, I had a lot of freedom through most of that. I guess things got more specific when I started working on the Total War series. The first one was Shogun Total War, so obviously it had to be authentic Japanese. music. And on that one, I think the first bunch of songs that I sent for approval got knocked back, which it's what I'm happy to say that happens very rarely.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So I was just like, what? But rightfully so, they said it wasn't authentic enough. I had made it too westernized. And so I just literally stripped out anything that was a Western instrument. And so it became very minimalist, koto, taiko drums, shakuhachi.
Right.
And I was a little concerned it was a bit underdone, and I sent that off. And they're like, "Yep, that's perfect."
Oh, wow.
And so that was a learning experience as well. So yeah, in terms of creative freedom, I have quite a bit of creative freedom until I get it wrong.
Nice. All right, let's move into Niko's next pick. What do you got for us?
Woo! All right, yes, I've got for you a track from, I would say, I guess a niche series, but this is going to be the menu track 3 theme from Cricket World Cup 99, or ICC Cricket World Cup England 99 for that full title, and menu track 3 by the one and only Jeff Van Dyke. And welcome back. You just heard the menu track 3 theme from Cricket World Cup 99, released on the PC in 1999. And wow, I love this track. An underrated gem of a song and soundtrack, I feel, in your whole catalog.
Cool.
I love this track. So, Mike, what did you think of this?
Oh man, that bass is that immediately caught my ear. It's just so low and rumbly. So that was what really piqued my interest. And then the drums too, just really punchy drums. This kind of reminded me of like Check Your Head era Beastie Boys. If there was like somebody with like a megaphone rapping over this, I'd be like, oh, this is just off of like whatever like Beastie Boys album came out, like a secret album in between like Hello Nasty and Check Your Head, you know, like that's kind of the vibe that it went for me at least.
Yeah, it's hard, you know, when somebody says, can you do some music for a cricket game, and it's just like, you know, what comes to mind? I'm not sure the average person would go, yeah, maybe some Beastie Boys. And it's like, it's you know, in these sports games, you know, in the end, it's like just try to come up with something that's going to be, either toe tapping or head nodding. That was definitely the vibe at the time, as well, hearing that kind of music. I think I subdued, there was very little heavy guitars on this particular soundtrack. It would be more funky guitars, cool beats. And, but wow, you guys are digging up some really old stuff here. This has been amazing to kind of come back to this stuff and listen to it again. It's bizarre going, oh yeah, I did that.
I love to hear that. I'm very much I don't want to say it as a negative, but like stuck in the past kind of thing when it comes to a lot of composers' work, because that's where I feel a lot of their greatest stuff is. And I love the funk on this too. I love it feels like the track is doing so much things. You got those drums too. I love that drum in the beginning, just that, it's so good. It sounds like it was about to be heavy, like the moment I played it, and it's like, oh wait, this is nice and chill. And like, what would you do for a cricket soundtrack? And this is your, I assume, just, you have freedom. EA probably didn't give you much or maybe they give you a little direction, but I feel like this is you at your peak of just pure creativity to do what I want. And the whole soundtrack, of course, is like this, which I obviously with every track from what game we're featuring, listen to the whole thing, please. I especially, there's not much attention on cricket games, I feel. And I would say you did a great job highlighting such a sport with this kind of sound. This track especially, just menu, again, it just jamming menu theme.
Yeah.
We'll have to.
That's cool.
I know that a lot of the tracks here that we focused on your older material. I'd love to tackle some of the newer stuff maybe in a future episode too, because I think the newest track that we have on here is Assault Android Cactus.
I think it is
2013. Yeah. So I often look at the older stuff, and it's not like we're an old timey podcast. We do stuff all over the place. We just did a Dragon Quest episode, but we focused on Dragon Quest 1 through 3. We picked a lot of the remake tracks too, like from the more recent remake tracks. We did a spotlight on Shinji Hose's soundtracks. We did a Wii episode where we focused on the Nintendo Wii only. So yeah, we're kind of all over the place when it comes to our material, but when it comes to composers, especially somebody who's had such a long and storied career as you, it's always fun to me to look back on their older stuff and go, what was the story behind like these older games? Because the development on these older game soundtracks is so much different in terms of what equipment you were using, what styles, and what what went into it. A lot of the times you had to be a programmer too, in addition to a composer. So like you had to have like the technological background in addition to your music composition background too. Yeah. I mean, like this stuff towards the later 90s, it was almost entirely redbook at that point. You know what I mean? Like it was all kind of towards the end of it. But, and that changed over a period of like, for me, about 8 years, from 92 being, but strangely, even like I said, in 92, I did that FM Town stuff. So it went straight to that, but then for me went back into chiptune stuff on the Mega Drive and Super Nintendo, and then it was in just basically about, I was I was in that mode for about 2 or 3 years, and then it all became streaming audio and just continued with that. Yeah, it's interesting for myself listening back to this. What it makes me think about is my personal journey, and I'm thinking, okay, where was I living in 99 when because I quite often when I listen to music, when I listen to old music of mine, I'm thinking about the physical space I was in when I created it and my studio. And I'm like, okay, what gear did I use when I did that? Or what software was I using? So listening to that. So let's say I moved to Australia in 97. So this was in my now home studio, and we had moved to the Gold Coast, and I'm picturing my little home studio, which was not too dissimilar to what I'm in at the moment. I have nicer stuff now, but do the giant
are still here.
Do the giant bugs and creatures in Australia help you compose, or?
No, I'm used to them now.
Okay.
Back then, though, yeah, definitely was a bit jumpy.
Yeah, I can
I've
imagine.
seen some pretty damn big spiders, I tell you.
Oh, I can imagine.
Luckily, they're not aggressive. They here in Queensland, we've got the huntsman, and it's a spider that grows as big as your hand, right?
Yep.
So,
Nope.
like, it's a big spider, and it moves really fast, which makes it even creepier. It's as scared of us as we are of it. If you did get bit by it, you'll feel a bit sick, but you won't die. It doesn't kill you, you know. But I'm not going to go finding out.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's the sort of situation you just burn your house down. Just be like, oh, there was a huntsman spider in my house. Looks like I got to gather up all my gear and take off.
But you know, I guess I'm just visualizing that studio that I had, and that's what it is for me. I know you guys are going back, and I think it's awesome that you're kind of celebrating this old stuff, because it gets forgotten, and it's nice to go back and relive that time. And I'm picturing that space I was in, and it was a 99. For me, it was like just before I bought a house and before I had a daughter, and you know what I mean, big events in my life. And that's what listening to old music does to me, is like it just brings me back to what was going on at that time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I love that. Yes, I mean, you've done a lot, and even up until that point in the late 90s, you were working with a lot of, you know, genre differences as well. Actually, I think this would kind of go into one of the questions I had, is just what genre would you say was the most fun to work with and incorporate?
Genre? Well, I like I said, I do like them all, but working with groups of other musicians is my favorite thing to do, which doesn't necessarily define the genre. But for me, what has happened when I worked on Shogun 2 in when was that? 2010 or 2011 or something? I think. I got to hire a taiko group. You know, I don't know if you've seen these guys. They're like groups of drummers. They get all synchronized, and they do these shows on stage where it's like a bit of choreography, and they're wearing the Japanese stuff and the drums. They got these ones that are just absolutely massive on this giant stand, and two guys are hitting it from both opposite sides, and yeah, just hiring them and going into a studio and recording them. I did another game called Submerged Hidden Depths, and I hired a string quartet. I went down to Adelaide, got my friend Christopher Larkin, who's a famous composer, but and also really nice guy, and he helped me record this string quartet. Working with other people in large groups of people, recording in a big studio, that's kind of my favorite thing to do. I like sitting here in my studio on my own and creating craziness and sharing that with the world. But it is a very, you know, without it sounding sad, it's a lonely experience. You know what I mean? It's just me and the software and the keyboards. And so, yeah, I think my favorite thing to do is get out of here in this space and work out there and do stuff with people. I think that's what I like the best, yeah.
Nice.
Love it.
All right, we're going to go back to SKITCHIN. So our next track is from the Genesis Classic that came out in 1994. This track is called Cheese Grater. Let's give it a listen. Oh man, I love this soundtrack. SKITCHIN, that was the Genesis 1994 classic Cheese Grater, which is one of my favorite songs on this soundtrack by our composer guest, Jeff Van Dyke. Man, I love this whole soundtrack. I'm going to let Niko kind of spill his guts on what he thinks of it first, and then I'll kind of come back around to gush about it.
Yeah, this I can easily say is Jeff's best Sega Genesis soundtrack. And between what's going on with the sampled guitars, the DAC samples, and how many tracks there are, the titles, the energy, the creativity, and Cheese Grater, I mean, so fun. I love hearing these guitar samples done in the ways they were composed on each track. It's so fun. I can tripping over my words. God, it really is great. I mean, I feel like every single track is amazing. I mean, Cheese Grater, great track, but I'm impressed with just what you did here, Jeff. It is amazing, pure quality, and something that when people are like, "Oh, the Sega Genesis doesn't have that great sound job," I'm like, listen to SKITCHIN.
Right.
Better change your mind, because this is how you make this console sound amazing.
That's cool.
So before I get into it, I did have a question, because on this soundtrack is posted on the Internet Archive. For whatever reason, some of the other sources that we use to grab soundtracks from it's not listed for whatever reason. I noticed another name listed here for Kevin Pickle. Is that
Pickell? Yeah.
Pickell?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Was he also involved in the soundtrack? Because your name is the only credit.
No, he deserves credit on this. He made the sound driver.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
And he's a programmer, and he made the DAC on the Sega Genesis play 4 sounds at once, as opposed to just one. And I could have kick, snare, and guitars all happen at the same time. Every time I tried using the 4th channel, the whole thing would distort, so I actually never did get away with 4 samples at once. Mm-hmm. But I could do kick, snare, and guitar, and one of the channels could change pitch, which I used for the guitars. So if I remember, sample-wise, so on a guitar, there's the power chord, which goes zzz, and then there's chugging, right? So I think there was an E chug and an A chug, and then an E power chord and an A power chord. I have those 2 notes sampled, but then to get the other notes on the keyboard, I would use those same sounds, but pitched up on the keyboard. And then when the E sample got so high and started to sound funny, it would switch to the next actual sample. They call it multi-sampling. And I had very basic multi-sampling going on the Genesis, which was really cool that we could do that.
The sampling, SKITCHIN, like the voice sample, the PCM sample, those are really clean and clear. How did you get those so clean sounding? Was that also Kevin?
Well, I mean, it's his driver. All the audio goes through his driver. Mm-hmm. And I think we were locked at 11 kilohertz 8-bit was the quality we had. That just was not going to go any faster, any better than that. I mean, I think I may have done some EQ or whatever to just get the most out of it. Mm-hmm. That was really the trick with it, was to process the samples in such a way that they sounded better in those conditions. So that's why Kevin's credit is there, I think, and is because he made this driver, which just worked amazingly. And so we used that on all of the EA Canada sports games. So you'll hear it on the FIFA and the NBA and Coach K and
that makes
whatever
sense.
else we did.
He is also credited on the game as additional programming. So it's not that he doesn't have a credit, it's just under additional programming instead of sound specifically. So the music in this is super shreddy, super chunky and heavy sounding. And just the vibes are very skateboard-esque. I'm not sure on the specifics of which you'd be able to answer, but SKITCHIN is just such a fun soundtrack to listen to while playing the game, which we'll talk about what the game actually is in a minute. And it fits like really well with what's happening on the screen. So what was the reason for choosing like the grungy, punkish kind of metal style for this soundtrack? And like, were you inspired by any particular band? Because one that really stood out to me was the intro track that we played from SKITCHIN, which has the SKITCHIN sound effect in it. There's a part in that track that sounds like Metallica's, I think it's Enter Sandman. So
interesting. Yeah, could very well be.
Was there any particular band?
No, I mean, it was an accumulation of Metallica, Pantera, you know, like just metal, you know, was the thing.
Yep.
And the thing is I had never done rock music before this. I feel like once that tap was opened, just this pent up large amount of rock came out of me all at once. And I was, first of all, the game was fun. It was the team, we were like all just focused on grunge and metal and attitude and angst. The creative direction of it was really strong, and that makes a big difference on a game when the direction is really strong and gets everybody synchronized in the same vibe, you know, and it comes through in the art, comes through in the gameplay, and it comes through in the music in this case. Yeah, so they just said, yeah, make it aggressive rock music is what they said. So that's what I did. You know?
Skitching in and of itself is a real thing. So
it is.
This game is where you're playing as an inline skater who is trying to win a tournament by racing other skitchers, I guess you could call them. The way that you do that is you are skating with these inline skates, these rollerblades or whatever, and you're grabbing onto the back of cars, which is what skitching is where you're grabbing onto the back of cars and then using their momentum to drive, basically, while you're on skates. They're like pulling you on skates in a way.
Yeah. And then you would swing,
pull yourself.
You can pull away,
yeah,
and accelerate and grab the next one. You kind of daisy chain them and get faster and faster. Yeah.
However, playing this game is just so fun and goofy and silly because I'm absolutely terrible at this game. But I love playing it and trying to figure out how. Like this is like one of the few sports games that I have for the Genesis called like Totally Complete in Box. I love this game, and it's one of those games where like the more you play, the more fun you have when it's such a well-designed game. Like I couldn't get how to like shimmy over so that I could pull myself forward to start skating faster, and that was always my difficulty in playing this game. It feels very much like Road Rash, which makes sense because both were EA. So how did this even come about? Do you know, like, as far as like, was somebody in the office like a skitcher and they were just like, it'd be fun to make a game on?
I wish Tarney were here. I could probably ask him because he was involved with that. But what I do know is that the idea of the game came. I'm not sure where that came from, but then it was put to EA San Mateo to could we have the Road Rash engine and use that to build our game from, and that's why it looks a lot like Road Rash.
That makes sense.
It's the same engine. It's just that we got rid of the bikes and put in skitchers. In terms of who actually came up with the idea, I don't know the answer to that. But and the guy yelling SKITCHIN at the beginning was one of the programmers.
Okay.
Dan Wesley, and he was a guitar player. I didn't sample him. I did sample him, and he was one of those guitar players that does the crazy riffs, like like up and down the guitar neck, and I recorded him doing that, and I didn't end up using any of it until you finish the game, and when you beat the game, there's a sort of victory sequence. And right at the very end, you hear some of his riffs.
Oh, that's cool.
At the very end. I mean, like it would take a long time to get there, and if it's a blink and you'll miss it kind of moment. But I'm sure there's YouTube of the ending of it, and you can hear Dan wailing on the guitar at the end there.
Oh my god, I love that a lot. That is, I would say actually the final track, just Winner, is my favorite because of that ending. Because going through the whole soundtrack, listening to it, I'm sure like 200 plus times, just on my iPod alone, like counting the play count from beginning to end. Just that ending is the build up and execution is perfect. I'm so satisfied every time I'm getting to the end of the soundtrack, but then I get sad because I'm like, oh, it's over, but then I'm like, oh, just put it on loop again. And then I love those guitar riffs so much.
Speaking of Traz Damji earlier, so at this time at EAC, we had composing rooms, but they weren't great because they were just offices and leakage. Like if one composer was working on one game over here and one in the next room, you could hear each other's music while they were writing. So it was a real pain in the ass, and we all had to wear headphones, even though we had our own little home or our own office studios. Then they said, okay, we're going to build you guys really nice composing rooms. And so they sort of very corporate destroyed this whole floor of a big office building in Burnaby. They started building them. But then while they were doing that, we had to work in these other offices, but it was 2 composers per room. So Traz and I shared a room. It was just an office space, and he put his gear at one end, and I put my gear on the other end, and we're both on headphones. He's working on NBA, like one of the first NBA games. I'm working on SKITCHIN. I'd be working away at something on SKITCHIN, and a tap on the shoulder. Traz is all excited. Hey, check out this funky jam I just did. And we'd take off the headphones, he'd turn on the speakers, we'd listen to his funky track, and we'd be like, yeah, it's awesome, man. Really supportive of each other. I'd try and create some wicked guitar riff or whatever on the keyboard, and I'm making these rock tracks and doing the same thing, play it to Traz. What do you think of this? And it's like, oh, that's cool, dude. And we just had this really fun, supportive, positive, creative vibe going on. And so all that SKITCHIN music was written on a keyboard on headphones in a shared office space. So it wasn't even like a great musical composing environment. Wasn't really good. But I do have fond memories of that process, going through that with Traz. And I think it's because that's one of the reasons why he and I are such good friends still, like going through something like that together for a year, sharing an office. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
That's cool.
I'm gonna say that SKITCHIN is freaking
badass.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like, should I swear? Like, just slightly, but it's
Badass.
worth it. It is worthy of that titling.
It's just so silly and goofy. It's just like, it's super fun. And, I do like the Road Rash games as well. There's something about SKITCHIN that just makes me smile every time I either see it like at a game store or if I sit down and play it. It's one of those games I'll just pop in and play for an hour, and I'll be just absolutely terrible, but it's just got so much charm to it. I love the title tracks, or like the tracks too, the names of the tracks that you got here, like Spicy Placenta.
I was just gonna say, thank you for giving us that.
Sniff,
Eat my junk.
Caffeine Dream, Tastes Like Chicken. This is all like stuff that you would see on like, like it's very funny names of tracks that you would also probably see the names of on like a punk album, you know what I mean? So it's cool.
They're like Primus. I feel like these are like Primus.
Oh yeah,
titles,
Primus.
too.
Yeah. Crunchy Bumpkin is definitely a Primus track.
Primacy thing.
Yeah, Benign Fluff. I love them all so much.
Oh, yeah. But I don't know. Yeah, Cheese Grater has been one of my favorites because that's one of the first songs you hear after the intro. I think it's like the first stage that you play. And it just it's just got the whole soundtrack has such a great crunch to it. It really makes me get pumped and energized to play. So I'm going to have to sit down tomorrow and play some SKITCHIN. All right.
Yeah.
Let's move into your next pick. What do you got for us, Niko?
All right, we discussed just a little bit of this series. Of course, I had to feature something from this series, one of Jeff's longest series he's ever worked on, and this is the Mongol Mobilized 1 theme from Shogun Total War, released on the PC in 2000. Welcome back. You just heard the Mongol Mobilize 1 theme from Shogun Total War, released on the PC in 2000 by the one and only Jeff Van Dyke. A wonderful track. A nice job, too. I know we had a lot of energetic tunes pretty much going on, and now we get something much more calm and entrancing. Just a wonderful, wonderful theme. Mike, what'd you think of this?
Yeah, this was great. I really dig. You said they were throat vocalists, is that right?
Yeah, Tuvan throat singers. They have a particular way of singing where they can generate 2 tones at once. So they create like a droning single note with their vocal cords, but then they generate a sort of a harmonic melody by changing the shape of their mouth while humming that low note. So yeah, they can create 2 tones at once. It's amazing.
So you had to hire these guys to do this, right?
I got a library of sounds of them doing this. Yeah. Back in the early days of my composing, I was using a lot of library sounds. I, at the time, did not know any Tuvan throat singers.
Right.
So it was out of necessity that I had to use that. Nowadays, if I was given that opportunity again, I would actually find people that could do that. It would be easier to find people to do that nowadays too. It's just easier to communicate these days than it was back then.
Right. And plus you had those sound banks like at your disposal, so you didn't have to pay necessarily, because I would imagine that all those sound banks you had to pay for in order to use them, right? Yeah,
so of course. Yeah, and you had to find them, and there was, for every good one there was 5 bad ones.
Right.
So trying to find that sort of thing. Other sounds in there are me, doing drum stuff or percussion stuff. I think the little shaker sound in that is actually some bean pods that I found outside. Here in Australia, there's these trees that drop these long pods that are about, I don't know, 1.5 feet long, full of seeds, and they dry in the sun, and they make great shakers. And so I just recorded myself using those in there, and yeah.
That's cool. So this is a real-time strategy game. Play as a character named Daimyo, I believe.
Daimyo, yeah.
Daimyo, yeah.
Daimyo or Daimyo. I don't know if actually the pronunciation.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's split into 2 different sections. There's a map-based planning stage and then like a 3D battle stage. So the map stage is where you build like buildings and the territories that you own. You organize forces, you play in campaigns and things like that. And then once a conflict arises, you go to the battle stage section. So it's a little bit different, though, from real-time strategy games, from most other real-time strategy games, as the battles take place on a fully 3D battlefield with like a very realistic-looking terrain. Pretty cool.
It was pretty amazing when it first came out. Nobody had ever seen anything like that. And it's almost like 2 games in one. The strategy map, you could have a game that just looks like that, because it looks like chess pieces on a map of Japan. It looks really nice, really stylized. And then you could have assassinations and send a ninja to go and try and take out the enemy general. And they made all of these videos of assassination attempts, the attempt and the success and the fail. And there's variants of each of these. And they were fully animated. And they're hilarious. They're being developed in England. There's definitely a sort of British humor to these things, and they're quite entertaining to watch. I highly recommend finding them on YouTube. So there was that. So you could just say just that is a game, but then they did the whole 3D battlefield thing, which is a whole game in itself, in controlling thousands of troops. And really, it's like a proper battle simulator. Puts you in the general's seat, which is really neat.
Would you say that something like this is probably one of the most challenging soundtracks that you've worked on, because it is so different from all the other stuff that you've done? Or do you have a particular soundtrack that would be considered your most challenging?
I would say this stuff was quite challenging, because I had never done anything like this before. So I just had to research it. I watched a lot of, Japanese movies. There was this movie called Ran, which was a big influence on the game, big influence on the developers. Basically it definitely had the vibe we were going for aesthetically. And there's literally, in fact, actually, I think in Shogun, or maybe it was Mongol, I can't remember. They licensed footage from the movie.
Oh, wow.
Because the game took so much from that movie, it felt natural to use some of it, the footage from that movie, in the intro movie for the game.
Oh, okay. On this one or a
really
different version of Shogun?
It was either the original Shogun or it was the Mongol invasion. I think it was the original Shogun. I can't quite remember. It was a long time ago. But yeah, it was a really cool game. But it was also one of those things where the director on the game came to visit me. He was also Australian. He was in this company called Dreamtime Entertainment. Michael DePlatter was his name. And he was the one that got me working with Creative Assembly, which is how I managed to work with an English company when moving to Australia. It's a weird thing, but that's how it was, because of him. Michael came over. I had been working on the sports games like cricket with him and Creative Assembly. Yeah, because Creative Assembly used to do sports games for Electronic Arts, the like more Aussie and English sports games, so cricket, rugby, AFL, that kind of thing. Anyways, so I'd worked on those. Then Michael came over and said, hey, check out this game. He showed me an early build of Shogun, and he said, you think you could do authentic Japanese music? And I said, sure, no worries. And just confidently said I could do that. And he went away, and I'm thinking, I've never done this before. How do I do that?
Yeah.
And I just studied it up, learned about the scales that Japanese music was based on and the instruments they use, and just emulated it. And there was, like, you could buy synthesizers that had like a world bank in it,
right?
And it had
like
a world sound bank, and within it had the typical Japanese sounds. And in fact, I think my first demo is using that. It sounds super synthetic out of a synthesizer with a world bank. It has that sound, and I slowly got better at making it sound more organic and using the libraries and just blending some acoustic performance with the libraries, and that seemed to work out in the end. Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, absolutely. I'd say you knocked it out of the park for your first real departure from all what you did before with, FIFA, the NHL games, cricket, NBA, and doing this, it's so good. It really immerses you into the game. And I mean, it's so good. You won a BAFTA for this as well.
I did. Yeah, no, that was very unexpected. But yeah, very nice. Awesome. It was really cool.
Well deserved, I say.
For sure. All right, let's get into my last pick before we finish up with Niko's last pick. So we're going to listen to a track called Select Your Car. It's also known as Car Selection, depending on which version of the game that you are listening to. So this is from the FM Towns version of a game called Stunts, and it's also known as 4D driving, and this came out in 1993. And so yeah, we're going to listen to Car Selection or Select Your Car, depending on which version you're listening to. And the original version was done on the PC 98, and that was by Michael Securka. And we're going to be listening to the FM Towns version by Jeff. All right, you're back, and that was my final pick. That was from Stunts 4D Driving, the FM Towns version. Came out in 1993, and that was the Car Selection or Select Your Car song, originally composed by Michael Securka and done by Jeff, our guest composer, Jeff Van Dyke. So tell me, how is it difficult to translate a song that was on the PC 98 originally and kind of fit it into the FM Towns?
I wouldn't call it hard. No, I mean, like, it's probably the other way around, to be honest. That would be hard. If you wrote something with acoustic instruments and then tried to make that work on the PC 98, you're going to have to now create the MIDI version of an acoustic instrument, which is almost never a good thing. Right? Whereas something that originated when Michael wrote this stuff, he would have composed it in more of a synth FM environment. And then we took those MIDI files, went into my studio, and now we recorded him playing guitar, him playing bass. I redid the drums with nicer samples and mixed in a more, studio environment rather than effectively being a programmer and programming an FM chip to spit this out. So it's easier and arguably more fun because those limitations are gone now. And it's just like, okay, well, how good can we make this sound as an actual, just recorded track?
Right. Niko, what are your thoughts on this one?
Oh, I love this track specifically. Of course, it has to always happen every so often. I bring up the GST channel that was featured in an artist, Jeff Van Dyke, way early in the channel's channel, obviously. And I recommend checking that out if you want to also sum up Jeff's career at that time in 2017. Yeah, he featured this track, and I was like, I got to get the MP3. I got to put this on loop because I love this track, and I love when that you keep hearing the little bass notes and like and it keeps getting lower and lower until the end. I love that part too. Every time I always have to verbally just go like with the bass. Every time it keeps getting pitched lower. It's so good, so fun for such a short track. It's great though. I love tracks that can also, you can just keep looping and you never get tired of it.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it's something that's designed to be such a short track anyways, just naturally, because when you're picking your car, you're in there for not that much time. It's easy to loop that sort of song over and over if you wanted to, but typically most people don't even let the full track play. They're just like, I want this car. Boom, done. So a lot of the times you don't even end up hearing the entire song, which is kind of sad. And I hate it when that happens. But so this had many publishers and many different versions. It came out on DOS, it came out on Amiga, FM Towns, PC-98, and all different publishers too, like Broderbund, Mindscape, Electric Arts, I'm assuming is the one that you worked on, and then Novitas. How does that work as far as working with other publishers on different versions? Because I'm assuming Distinctive Software Inc. is the developer. So are you just pitching different versions of the game to different publishers, or how does that work?
I wasn't part of that, but what I can tell you is that Distinctive Software are the people that I initially went for the job application with way back when in 92. But then Distinctive Software got bought by EA. And so DSI became Electronic Arts Canada. And so that's sort of how that worked. So DSI would have been what we would call an indie these days. They would have been a larger independent developer and working with multiple publishers, whoever would publish their game.
Right.
Kind of like how things are now, except that I would say most indies, actually no, so I think in some indies will work with different publishers. In fact, Witchbeam has done exactly that. We've worked with different publishers. So it's a thing. It was a thing back then, and it's still a thing. And it just comes down to finding that opportunity of somebody who wants to help launch your game. That's why that would look so complicated back then, though, because DSI was independent, and then after that, they got bought and became Electronic Arts Canada.
Oh, interesting.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Couple last questions from me. First off, do you have a favorite video game that you've worked on, and why is it your favorite?
Favorite video game that I've worked on? I have a couple. They're two very different ones. Okay. I really liked working on Alien Isolation. The subject matter was so interesting. I'm a huge fan of the original Alien movie, the slow methodical one. I won't say slow and boring.
The OG one, right?
I'm a huge fan of that. So Alien Isolation the story is in between the first and second movie that we inserted a bit of plot in there. Yeah, and the reason for why it was my favorite is I got to work with amazing people who are just at the top of their job. I was the audio director. I did do a little bit of music in there, but we hired these guys called The Flight that did the majority of the music. And they did a spectacular job, and they recorded at Air Studios, which sounds amazing. So, and we had great creative direction. Like I said earlier, that having really solid creative direction really helps with the game's success. I just really enjoyed working on that game. I remember working on it, so this would have been like 20 2013 or 2014, working on it late at night in my studio. And my studio at the time was in a garage in the back of the property. I'm sitting there testing, and that game is super scary. And I'm working on a really tense moment. So in Australia, we have possums that crawl around in trees. And we had a mango tree over top of the studio, and right at this scary moment, a possum fell out of the tree and landed on the roof above me. And I jumped out of my chair. I was like, yeah, it was classic. Anyways, just I had moments like that while working on this scary game. It was hilarious.
Speaking of Alien Isolation, so approaching the game as an audio director to the composers on your sound team, what was your approach in doing that?
So it was really important for us to license the original themes of the movie, which was very interesting because, and if you look into this, there's a really interesting story about, what's his name, Jerry Goldsmith's soundtrack for Alien. They asked him to write the soundtrack for Alien. He wrote the soundtrack and recorded it. They started putting it in, and the director didn't like it. Who's the director again?
What's his name?
Ridley Scott.
Ridley Scott.
Ridley Scott. Thank you. So Ridley was at odds with Jerry and said, "I'm not feeling this." And now the editor of the movie took other Jerry Goldsmith music from another movie called Freud and put it in to Alien, and it works really well. And that's the music that we know and love for Alien. Is actually chunks of it are from another movie.
Yep.
So
I mean, if they wanted to make it really good, they could have just put the SKITCHIN soundtrack in.
A bit of cheese grater while the alien's chewing on your face.
Yeah,
that's it.
Learning all that, things got complicated, and I think Fox was involved. But anyways, long story short, we managed to get the license for the key themes. We were able to get the composers to reorchestrate those themes. Actually, just to circle back, when we first started putting the game together, we were taking music from the movie and just putting it into the game because we thought this will make sense. Let's hear that Alien music in an Alien game, just as placeholder. You know, what was really interesting is that I felt it didn't work very well. And I was scratching my head like, why isn't this right? Why does it feel weird? And it ended up being the fidelity. So you got to remember, Alien is from 1979, I think.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think the soundtrack, or some of it, if not all of it, is in mono. We're talking the cusp of proper audio quality in movies. At least it had a very mono sound. Maybe it was recorded in stereo, but what we got sounded very mono. And also just kind of lo-fi. But of course it had been recorded analog back in the day. And putting it in the game, it felt a little bit, didn't quite match the aesthetic. Even though the game was going for sort of a old school vibe, everything was a little bit lo-fi, a little bit rusty, a little bit broken. You know, that was the premise that the world that they wanted to put forward. Yeah, that putting the original music in there didn't really feel right. And when we put in the proper new composed version, which was like nice and stereo and nice, we had dynamic layers of different sections of the orchestra could fade in and fade out based on what you were doing, what was going on. Then it felt right. It really clicked and came together.
Did you look at any previous Alien games for inspiration when developing the concept?
No, I didn't on purpose. I didn't.
Okay, just the movies.
They'd had a bad reputation up until that point.
Huh.
And
the games themselves? Like Alien games? Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm a bit like, I like to just stay in my own little bubble to keep my focus. The other thing is, on that particular game, while I was the audio director, my involvement was very much kind of more like herding the cats, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And making sure people were doing the thing that needed to be done. And I would sometimes talk with the creative director, Alistair Hope, and he'd give me a message like, you know what, just keep the focus. He came up with this phrase. He said, make it sound CRT, not LCD, was the catchphrase that he threw around.
That makes sense.
And I loved that.
Yeah.
And I was saying that over and over again. I was preaching that to the guys. And basically, it was just a way of just keeping everybody focused on, like, what should the aesthetic of the sound be, right? In the end, there was another person involved who did a lot of the management of that project, of the audio. His name was Mark Angus, and he was the guy that brought in the flight. He did a lot of direction with them. And then it turns out that Mark had to leave the project, and I came in towards the end and helped sort of finish things off. It was a very weird project to be involved in. There was a point where I was going to write the music for it.
Oh, wow.
But then I wasn't, due to various weird political reasons and what have you. Not going to go into that here, but I was there at the beginning, I was there at the middle, and I was again there at the end of that project. And the team stuck together, and we all got there in the end. I realize this is a long, verbose answer to your question, but in the end, for the music side of things, I didn't have a lot of directional, like I didn't really direct the composers so much. But what I did do is when we got the stems back of the music. So stems are, for those that don't know, when a composer delivers music, if it's not just a stereo mix, like single file of the song, if they deliver stems, they give you the bass, the strings as a track, the horns as a track, the synthesizers, the choir, the percussion. They'll, for one song, you might have 20 tracks. They do this so that we can actually dynamically mix the song in the game and make layers come in and out based on various parameters in the game. Like, for example, how far away is the alien? If the alien is really close, let's make the tense strings get really loud, or if he's far away, let's make that all get a bit quieter. You can do cool stuff like that. But what I'm getting to with that is, in amongst the stems was a lot of electronica, a lot of synths and little drum machines and stuff. And the creative director wasn't crazy about that. And so I ended up having to go through all the music and kind of take out that layer of all of the music. And then there was a few spots in the game where they're just, they've added a new section of the game. Composers weren't aware of it. So I've gone in and made a little track for a moment in the game. So I do have some music in there. But yeah, that was my experience working on that game. That's cool. And luckily enough, it won a BAFTA for its audio as well. Which
I was just going to say that. Yeah. Congrats on that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was really cool.
For those of our listeners who are interested in hearing an awesome Alien soundtrack of a video game, check out Alien 3 on the Sega Genesis. It's got a really great soundtrack by, of course, Matt Furness, with sound drivers by Sean Hollingworth. So that cool. is the one that really kind of piques my ear every time anytime anybody mentions like an Alien video game soundtrack. That's always my go-to. I'm like, oh man, but have you heard Alien 3 on the Genesis? It's got a awesome.
I haven't heard it. I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah, killer Matt Furness soundtrack, which Matt could actually on my previous podcast, Pixel Tunes Radio, we interviewed Matt, and he couldn't sing Sean Hollingworth's sound driver praises enough. So good stuff there.
That is good stuff. And I went through real quick. Same thing too, but for Alien 3 on the NES by Jerome Tell.
Oh yeah, Jerome Tell. Yep.
Fantastic soundtrack. Yeah. Especially for even more limited hardware, which, he's a master of all. That's true. Yeah, I totally forgot about the NES version of that. That is good. And actually, I want to just real quick before moving on. It was for the question of your favorite games you worked on. It was Alien Isolation. Then you said there was two. What would the other one have been?
The other one that I really enjoyed working on was a game called Submerged Hidden Depths. I mentioned that one earlier.
Yes.
That's the one where working with Chris Larkin and the string quartet. This was right around COVID times. It was challenging with some of the rules of COVID and blah, blah, blah. But
sure.
It was just a very pleasant experience working with really great people. Again, people who are just pros at what they do. The game itself is interesting, sort of post-apocalyptic, but very beautifully presented. The world is flooded. The main character climbs buildings that are poking up through the water, just the tops of buildings. It's really interesting. I got to kind of just go to town on that game and just do nice ambient stuff and nice piano and string quartet. So I really enjoyed work on that too.
Nice.
Definitely have to check that out. And same with Alien Isolation. I get freaked out by games like that, but I feel like I got to do it now just so I can hear your sound. Your audio director and just everything with the sound, because that is part of what makes those games so great and immersive too. Even when you're getting freaked out, it's just like,
Yeah. All right, let's get into our final track on this awesome episode. Niko, take it away.
Oh, I can't believe we're here. I don't want it to end, but all good things must end. And I am bringing as usual, my last track is always like my favorite or best, or just whatever that stipulation is. And for me, Song 4 from FIFA Soccer 95 from the Sega Genesis, released in 1994. This track, what we're going to end it on, by our wonderful guest, Jeff Van Dyke. Welcome back, everybody. You just heard the last song of this amazing episode, the interview with Jeff Van Dyke. You heard Song 4 from FIFA Soccer 95 from the Sega Genesis in 1994. A wonderful finale track, I do say so myself. And as much as I give praise, of course, to SKITCHIN as just Jeff's best Sega Genesis soundtrack. I say this one song, I would say, represents his work on actually the Sega Genesis the best. There's something about just the build up, the energy, those drums kick in. It is so good, and that synth melody, I don't know if that's like polyphony or anything, because again, I'm not the best with those terms or what, if that applies well, but there is something so satisfying with every single sound channel and instrument that is being used on this. So good.
Cool.
It's just, I love it so much. What do you think? What do you think, Mike?
I do really like this, and I will say that it's interesting to hear the sound difference between something more like SKITCHIN, which is a little bit more gritty, a little bit more dirty sounding, versus this, which is a lot more cleaner and polished sounding, flows differently. It's obviously a different genre of music as well. I think this one, sound-wise at least, sounds a little cleaner than what we're used to with some of the other compositions that Jeff has done on the Genesis. And I'm wondering if that's like a conscious thing just because it's a soccer game and not like, something a little bit more crunchy sounding like the Genesis.
Yeah, that's definitely on purpose to sound a little bit more clean is a good way to put it. It's more electronic. Dare I say European? I don't know. If that's a thing.
Makes sense.
FIFA is very much a European thing, Even though it's currently happening in North America at the moment, isn't it? It's happening in the World Cup is happening over there. Yeah, I agree with this choice. This is one of my personal favorites. There's something about it. For me, there's kind of an optimism to it, for lack of a better word. There's something that makes me feel optimistic. And I think that's probably just because I was trying to think about the frame of mind I was in when I was writing something, and I was clearly in a good mood because I feel like that's just coming through in that song.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I would say all of them do. And of course, we actually still get some of your guitaring on the title screen theme. There's that crunchy guitar. It does come back.
It does.
But the rest of the rest of the main, song 1, 2, 3, 4, all kind of sounds similar to this. I mean, one of them even almost, I believe it's like the first song 1 theme. It has like a, I don't know, Egyptian kind of vibe. I don't need to.
Yeah.
I mean, I do want to talk about all the tracks because they're all so great. And even the previous one, it has another optimistic feel. I think that's also a great, I'm glad you described it as that because I feel that way too. It's just a great send off. I mean, this was your, not last Sega Genesis, but the last of the FIFA games, I believe, that you worked on.
That's right. That's right. I did the first couple.
Which I love, of course, listen to the Sega Genesis FIFA International Soccer, the Sega CD version, which just great versions of the Sega Genesis tracks, and Super Nintendo.
The thing about the FIFA Sega CD is I did the same thing that I did on the FM Towns stuff. Is I took the MIDI stuff that I did for the Genesis and went down to the studio and then remixed it, and because the Sega CD could have the redbook audio on it. And did that again, which was really fun to do as well.
Yeah, I'm sure that's like fun to play with because you've got so much more possibilities that you could do with the redbook audio. Yeah,
exactly.
Very nice. All right, well, now is the time of the show where we get to pick our favorite tracks, and Jeff's included in this, but I'm going to let Niko pick first. That way I don't have to pick first. Because that gives me time to sift through the sheer awesomeness of Jeff's catalog that we listened to on this episode. So, Niko, take it away. What's your pick for best track?
Well, guess what? I have a quick pick. No, I mean, it is still difficult as well. It is hard to choose. Of course, I always try not to choose my own, but I mean, it's tough because it's like, of course, I chose it because it's great. I love it so much. Of these, oh gosh. Now I am put on the spot. It's so tough. I mean, I would say favorite track of what picked on this episode. God. I'm stuck between actually NBA Live and the FIFA Soccer 95. They are my choices, but I probably, you know what? I'm gonna go with the last one, what I just played, song 4, because I know I just love what just told me about it, feeling so optimistic, and it's a great sounding theme, and I love so much of what Jeff has done across all his work, of course. But the Sega Genesis, and he made that sound chip sound so good, and I can never thank you enough for what you've done on that console. It's so good.
Cool. Thank you.
Agreed.
It's awesome.
Okay, so I love SKITCHIN. I love talking about SKITCHIN. I love saying SKITCHIN. And and as much as I really want to pick SKITCHIN, I think I'm going to go with the Assault Android Cactus track that I picked.
Yeah.
I love the vibe on that, and just I also think back to playing the game with my oldest daughter and just like really enjoyed that aspect of it as well. But yeah, primarily I really love outside of a club listening to, you know, the techno music, you know, vibe. But definitely SKITCHIN is a backup second place for sure. I was also really impressed with the Missile Command track, as well as NBA Live 96, both of those, which were really impressive to hear. The
cool.
NBA Live 96 track, hearing those samples was just really impressive. It's always cool to hear samples on the Super NES soundtrack, so it's fun to hear and kind of pick from it and be like, what was the inspiration for stuff like that? So hearing that Rage Against the Machine was an inspiration is it makes a lot of sense for that one.
Yeah. Yep.
What about you?
I think out of this selection of songs, I would go for the NBA Live 96.
Yeah.
Because
I love it.
Because I'm a sucker for heavy music. Also, my friend Saki played on it. Unfortunately, Saki passed away in 2016. And so anything has a recording of him in it is always dear to my heart. And hearing him rock out on that, it just makes me think of him. And it's a good feeling to hear him rock out, and I'm just glad music can do that it can capture a moment and keep it forever, and it's eternal, right? So
yeah, for sure.
Leading up to doing that project and the inspiration, and yeah, it was such a fun project to work on.
Be interesting to hear the original non-sampled versions of those songs.
Yeah, I was thinking about digging those out and putting them up on YouTube or something like that. So I might do that, because I've been meaning to do that with a lot of old tracks, actually. So
nice.
When I do, I'll let you guys know.
Yeah, let us know. We'll definitely share it on socials.
Yes, that would be amazing, because I mean, there's a lot of interest with people that love like the original like versions of the Super Nintendo songs, like the Donkey Kong Country soundtrack. It's like when Sam and Jan Miller did this whole like restoration and like pretty much using the exact like I believe instruments or keyboards for how that soundtrack's created. So hearing the original version of the end of quarter theme would be amazing. I love that, and I'm glad you picked it too, because again, your hardware pushing on that super impressive, and I don't care how low fidelity it sounds, it's amazing coming off of that Super Nintendo soundtrack.
Oh yeah. Cool to hear what you just mentioned, because when we talked to Grant Kirkhope about some of his work, we talked to him in depth about Perfect Dark, and we talked about the credits theme, which has this really awesome like guitar-driven song, and he actually recorded and released actual version of the song that wasn't like highly compressed. And so it's always like really cool to hear composers release their stuff and be like, hey, I know you heard this song in 1995 or whatever it is and was horribly compressed. Here's what I had in mind for the original vision. That's always really cool to hear, especially from the composer themselves, to be like, hey, I opened up the vault. Here's what I got.
I'll look forward to doing that too.
Yeah. So what do you got going on in your world? Plug away anything that you've got coming up.
Yeah. Well, let's see. So I work on a game called Forts, which was released in 2017. We are still working on it because people are still buying it. And so it seems to take us about 3 years to make a DLC for it. So this is our third DLC called Forts Firebird. And basically what we've done is we've taken one of the commanders that's in the game and written a whole sort of backstory as to how she came to be. So if you're familiar with Forts, there's a commander named Firebird, and she's got these special powers in the game, and so we made a whole DLC dedicated to her and her journey. And with that, I'm releasing a full soundtrack to that game, and that launches on June 16th, so next week. So,
perfect.
Basically, after I talk with you guys, I gotta fix some bugs in the game.
Nice.
So that's cool. Another game that I'm working on is called Delvirium, and Delvirium is a pixel art game that's sort of a mashup between Stardew Valley and Terraria.
Oh, cool.
And so if you like that kind of game, I think this one's for you. Basically, designer and programmer Scott Lothar is an old friend from working at Creative Assembly, and he asked me to get involved with this, which I would gladly do because Scott's a great guy. Really nice to work with him. So I'm doing music on that. I've got a friend of mine, Anders, is doing the sound design. Anders Groningseder, my favorite Norwegian sound designer. So that game is coming, I think. Actually, you know what? I don't know if we've actually announced when that's coming out, but there's a free demo to play on Steam, Delvirium. And so that one I'm doing chiptunes meets heavy metal, which
awesome.
I think you can imagine is sort of my jam. So I'm getting into that. Scott likes guitar music, so he doesn't have to convince me to do it. Writing some fun songs with that. And then I think after Delvirium, I'm going to take it easy. I'm going to take a break because I've been writing music for many, many years and my ears are tired. So I need to rest the brain, rest the ears. I've taken up programming in the Unreal Engine lately and getting my programming chops on just for something different. And so I'm making my own game with my business partner, Sean Trainer. And Sean is actually also an awesome guitar player. He and I have worked in a few bands together. We had a band called Fuzz Pilot. And actually in Fuzz Pilot, I played the drums, which is hilarious.
Oh, cool.
So look up Fuzz Pilot if you're interested in that.
Heck yeah.
Sean and I are making this game called Squidge, and that's a 3D action adventure game in which you play an alien who crash landed on Earth, got captured by an evil scientist, and has to escape the laboratory and rescue his friends. Nice sort of fun, get up to mischief kind of game.
That sounds fun.
Yeah. So that got a lot of stuff going on and some interesting stuff going on. So
Yeah. Well, you definitely deserve a break because you've been plugging away for so long. So hope you enjoy your break whenever that comes. And we'd love to have you on the show again to maybe talk about some like more newer stuff. Yeah. So
let me know anytime.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks so much for being on the show. We really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Of course, it was a real honor. Thank you very much as a huge, of course, video game music lover and just appreciator of the art and everything with it. Thank you very much.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jeff.
So, we'd like to take a moment to thank our Patreon patrons, without whom this show's continued improvement would be impossible. They are Cam Worm, Rage Cage, Scott McElhone, Claire Myers, Brad Austin, Chris Murray, X-Zombie Mike, Nick Davis, Kitty Sparks, and Ryan McPherson. If you would like to become a patron, you can sign up at patreon.com/XVGM Radio. There you can see the different tiers as well. Just $1 gets you a thank you and access to our monthly live shows. You can also visit our website, www.xvgmradio.com, where you can listen to all the episodes and learn more about your hosts, as well as any of our guests or composers that we've had on the show. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can always email at xvgmradio@gmail.com. If you like what you've heard, please consider giving us a review on iTunes. You could join our Facebook group and chat with other VGM lovers at www.facebook.com/groups/xvgmradio, where we talk about everything from current game news to sharing awesome VGM tracks, or just talking about the podcast itself. You can also find us on Blue Sky and Instagram. Our handle on both sites is at XVGMradio. Don't have any other social media or just want to try something unique? Check us out on our Discord group chat. Links in the show notes.
All right, so next month we are coming back with another episode, and we're going to be back with Justin this time around, and he's going to be talking to me about Star Wars video game music in celebration of the summer blockbuster movie spectaculars that are coming out. Yeah, Mandalorian Grogu came out not too long ago. It was a great movie in the theater. Saw it in the theater. It was awesome. And so we're going to revisit some Star Wars music and in video games. Revisit some of our favorites. So tune in for that in 1 month. So this is Mike.
And I'm Niko.
Signing off for XVGM Radio. All right, that was Android Assault. Sorry, that was
So close.
Assault. Whoops.